Welcome to an all-new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. It's Corey Richmond, joined by Jason Brooks. As we get ready for the July 4th weekend, hope everyone is having a safe and healthy one. Jay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, hanging in there, enjoying the summer off. Well, a couple of weeks off.
Well, another interesting week in the world of wrestling. After we finished our dual episodes this past week, and of course, everyone should go out and check us out wherever you listen to podcasts and check out our special interview with ROH Dojo prospect Rocco, which you'll be able to hear that in audio form and video on our YouTube page, Work Shoot Podcast. And of course, give us a like and even a review, and we'll read on the air. But Jay, before we joined us this week, there was another set of releases from WWE. If you want to just get your quick thoughts on it, it was more in the NXT variety, 205 Live, saying basically you don't exist anymore. Listening to a lot of people, the Dave Meltzer story says this time around, we're getting rid of a lot of older guys, and what they're focusing now on more will be, signing young guys. It'd be like, one guy gets fired, another gets hired. But it's basically almost like cleaning up the books. What was your thoughts on this round of firings?
Yeah, I'm actually going back and looking at some of the people. I think that is interesting. If they look at it like, like NFL, let's say, where you get rid of some people and then you bring others in, I think it's an interesting way to think about it. I think it's an interesting way to look at it. I think it's interesting, like guys like Tyler Breeze, for example, one of the big releases. So a couple of things are interesting. Marina Shafir, wife of Roderick Strong, getting released was interesting because she was supposed to be in this stable, the Dynamite stable. So it's like, okay, she was supposed to be like the female enforcer. And when we see these stables now, a lot of them do have a female. Hit Row has a female there. She hasn't wrestled yet, but I'm sure she will. She looks like Jade Cargill, so I'm sure she'll be wrestling at some point.
Yeah, she looks good. She can go.
Yeah. So, so I think having a female in that stable would have made a lot of sense. So it's interesting they released her. Tyler Breeze. I wouldn't say, Fandango, Breezango. I wouldn't say that that's a surprise. They've been around for a long time. It's kind of what are they doing here? What are they gonna do? So it's one of those things. It's like you get a rookie in the NFL, and he's there for a couple of years. If he doesn't develop, you release him. I guess wrestling is always interesting because it's like, what does that mean to develop? What does that mean in the eyes of whom? That they developed or gotten better or didn't get better or whatever. So, I think moving forward, I think it could make for an interesting, put interesting pressure on NXT developmental prospects. Like you got to figure this shit out or you're going to be gone. And then the idea that they are going to be looking to get younger talents, like the kid who wrestled Adam Cole and Blake Christian and guys like that. I tell you, one thing I'm most excited for wrestling-wise the next couple of weeks is the Breakout Tournament. They had that 2 years ago. They didn't have it last year probably because of the pandemic. And look at who's come out of that, right? We got the new NXT North American champion. I was right as usual. We can talk about that later. You got the guy he beat, Bronson Reed. So you have some stars that have been made from Cameron Grimes, and the only one is the guy who left and retired. So, and who won the damn thing. So,
ACH, yeah.
So you have. So I think that's kind of where they're going to go, right? They're not going to wait for Samoa Joe to be 38 and then they're bringing him in, or Keith Lee. It's like, let's get Keith Lee when he's 25. And so there's so much more exposure to these guys now on television. Like getting a guy like Myron Reed for them, like getting those guys early, I think should be something they really think about. And so we'll see if that's the case with developmental. But again, it's, cost cutting for a company that's on pace to make the most profit they've ever made. So it's such a kind of a gross feeling. So when I go to my Robinhood, I look at different stocks or whatever. I have a bunch of random stocks, and the WWE is always one of those that comes up, and I'm like, I just can't invest my money in this company, knowing what they've done to people. Not that these other companies I'm invested in don't do horrible things. I just am not readily, I don't have all that information readily available to me. So So yeah, we'll see what happens, what that means for the future. But this definitely could be less of a we're cutting people to cut people, but more of a we kind of have to churn through who we think is not effective. But then that comes then they're really getting dicey because we saw that with Deanna Peraza and Tay Conti. Like, you release the wrong people, it's gonna come back to bite you in the ass.
No, absolutely, and that's a really good take on that. And the thing that you don't realize when this first happens is how long some of these guys are actually in the WWE system. I mean, Fandango was there for like 11 and a half years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you first hear about all these guys getting cut, it's terrible, and it still is, of course. But then you think about, these guys had one heck of a nice little run in the company. Did they ever reach the heights that, maybe they hoped they would themselves? No. But it's, these guys are getting older, and, you depending on some of the stuff you hear, I mean, there was rumors a couple of years ago when they were giving out all of these ridiculous, long-term deals because AEW was first starting. They wanted to lock everyone up in their mother, that at some point it was going to come back where they had to go and trim some of the stuff. You could say that some people will say the WWE, apologists will say, well, this is a sign that they truly don't care about AEW. AEW may have won the war on Wednesdays, but they're not a threat, so we don't have to keep all these, stockpiling guys. But then on the other side, you look at it and you go, what other things could happen to, in the future? Is this going to be every month? Are we going to have this type of cleaning of guys getting released? Because this is the third straight month where people are released. And you wonder, like, in 2 weeks, you've got, Slammiversary, and that was, where you saw a lot of guys last year come in. But in 2 weeks, the Chelsea Greens of the world, are going to have their chance to go and find out where they're going to wind up. And, you wonder how, when you keep on releasing people, how does that affect the market as a whole?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they could start a wrestling company with all the people that have been released. Some of the people who were really, again, Tyler Breeze, Fandango. I mean, no one, you don't want to see anyone lose their job, but they were there for a long time. They got a long chance. Guys like um, Killian Dane, I don't think he got a fair shot. I don't think he ever really got a fair run. Marina Shafir never got a shot.
Yeah.
And so those are the people that I generally feel bad for, who never actually really got, Kurt Stallion, they were putting him over hard. So
I think he was hurt, and unless he just got re-cleared, like him, Davari, a couple of these guys are actually hurt, and they may have just waited until they came off the quote unquote the DL or the IL in baseball now to go and to release them.
Well, they probably didn't wait, but they probably just released them. But yeah, it's just so it's a bummer for those people. But I think, in some ways, Marina Shafir can go and do something else and hopefully be successful. I think Killian Dane is a guy who will definitely get another job. So it'll be interesting to see where these people end up. And to your point, does this become a monthly, every other month occurrence? Do we see that? Because maybe at some point the idea is going to be, okay, let's sign a bunch of people. Let's sign people when they signed MSK, and look at what they've done with them. Look at what they've done with Taya Valkyrie, right? They've signed people and really put them up. Blake Christian, they just signed him, and he was on this. Yeah. So like they're signing people, but they're also letting people go at the same time. So we'll see how that continues to develop.
Yeah, and we'll continue to look at this over the next couple of months on where some of these guys land, if we hear any buzz on what could or could not be happening. But Jay, as we've been talking to start the show about NXT, let's start off with NXT. You brought it up at the beginning when you started the conversation about we're going to have the breakout tournament start in 2 weeks, which kind of really helped revive NXT a little bit 2 years ago by bringing in all these guys. I mean, with that tournament, it was guys who had never wrestled before in the company. The Swerve Scotts of the world, the Bronson Reeds, the ACHs, who had another name, I think Miles, something, or Jordan Miles.
Yeah.
But what do you think they're going to do this time? Do you think it's going to be just all new guys that haven't been on TV yet? Or do you think it's going to be some guys who they don't really have a story for, but they've been on like once or twice, like a Blake Christian?
Yeah, I think it's going to be guys who have been jobbing out. They had a guy wrestle, I forget what the guy's name is, that wrestled in a match this week. So I think it's going to be younger guys who have been jobbing out. That would be my thing. Like, I don't, I wouldn't put like Leon Ruff in that category because he's been on TV. I think it's got to be young guys we haven't seen or young guys who have jobbed out. I think, but it was interesting with the breakout tournament that they had years ago because you had Bronson Reed, who was a wrestling veteran, Swerve Scott, who we had seen as
Right.
Kill Shot and had been a wrestling veteran, guys in their early 30s, ACH, obviously Ring of Honor, wrestling veteran, New Japan. And Cameron Grimes, who was with Impact for a long time. So now let's see how this is, right? Blake Christian, I think, is like 23, 24 years old. So are these, we've talked about them trying to go younger. Is that what this becomes? Also, how do they get these guys' personalities over? Guys that we don't know anything about. It's not just going to be about their talent and seeing them wrestle, but it's also going to be about like knowing who these guys are and telling their stories and how they weave that into the regular NXT product, right? So, I'm excited to see how they do it and what they do and who's in it. But yeah, I think it'll be a fun tournament.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm interested to see what the next group of people are. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be out there saying, Rick Steiner's kid, and then the kid that was the college pro, which looks like, I think we spoke about last week. Looks like a young Brock Lesnar. As far as I've read in different things, neither one of these guys are really ready for that. I mean,
no, I don't think it'll be guys like that. Yeah, I don't think it'll be guys like that. Maybe they job out, but you can't put guys on TV who aren't totally ready. This isn't, this isn't the main roster. So, who knows? I guess it's possible. Maybe they've developed faster than we realize and they'll be out there. I don't know. But if they have no wrestling experience, I would not expect to see guys like that out there.
Absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see who we see in this tournament and how they maybe create some stories and some things going forward. So Jay, on this week's NXT, we saw possibly one of the final, maybe not one of the final appearances of Bronson Reed losing the title to Swerve Scott. Swerve Scott's a guy who we both have loved for a really long time, since his time in Lucha Underground as Killshot, real name Shane Strickland. Do you think that Bronson Reed losing the title and the idea that he was on, main event this past week and he's done some dark matches, do you think the end is near for him coming up to the main roster, or do you think he stays around to put some guys over for a little while? What's your best?
Before we do that, I've been called the human wheelbarrow for the show. And I was right again. Corey and I had a long talk, I think on the podcast and maybe off the podcast, about Swerve Scott and he's not being pushed and you're mad because he loses these matches. And I said, it's coming. Don't worry. It's coming. They're going to give him a shot. I know that's kind of a sarcastic applause by you, but like, I knew they would give him a shot because they kept pushing him and then they gave him the stable. And so I'm really happy for him. Seeing him develop his character, seeing this group with him. So I'm really happy for him. And he's also really, really good. He's really good. And that match was very good. I thought it was a great kind of big man, small man match. I think Swerve Scott's, he can, the sky's the limit with him in NXT. I mean, Vince McMahon's not going to know what to do with him, but as long as he's in NXT, I think he'll continue to do big things. So I'm happy for him. And it was a great match. Bronson Reed. Yeah, I mean, right. When there's smoke, there's fire. He's been wrestling a main event. He's been, we know Vince's default is to go with big guys when things aren't going great, when he wants to change things up. Bronson Reed's a big guy. So I think that there's a good chance we could see Bronson Reed. Also, it happened very quickly. Which is also interesting to me that it happened so quickly with no build. He just came out and said, I want to wrestle you. And he goes, okay, I'm good. Interesting that they didn't have any build, which makes me think Bronson Reed could be on Raw next week, but like that seems crazy. So I think he's not long for Raw or SmackDown. Maybe he's like somebody's muscle, something like that. So that's definitely what I would expect to see sooner rather than later, within the next month or two. And maybe he stays down there so they can repackage him and figure out what gimmick to give him, or keep him off TV for a while. and then he comes back as like a different character. So I could see that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how much longer he stays there, and if he, does like what they used to do in the old days, where when you leave a territory, you put some guys over it. I mean, does he put top dollar over and help this guy become something
No,
more?
what's he gonna do? Lose all these matches? No, it's not gonna lose all this.
I'm not saying lose to everybody, but maybe some
no,
of the younger guys.
no, that'd be ridiculous. He lost the title. Him getting put over, because then what's the value of a win or a loss? He just loses to everyone at Hit Row, and then he loses to the woman too. I mean, what are we gonna have him do? Tahuti Mile? He's gonna beat him? What are we doing here? They have a rematch. He loses the rematch. Maybe he even loses it clean because they did protect him. Maybe he loses that match clean, and that's how you put him over. Him losing the top dollar after losing it, that doesn't make any sense. So, I think if he's gonna go, I think you have them have one more match, and then you have him go after that. Because then, what are we doing here with this value? Or maybe it's a swerve and he stays down there for a little bit. So really, it could go either direction, but I expect for him to come up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll maybe be there for a couple more weeks. I mean, could I see a situation where they try to push this guy a little bit, and he winds up on SmackDown and maybe wins a slot in Money in the Bank next month as another, especially if that's his size, another guy to be a building block for this high flying match.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah,
that'd be a good one. That'd be a good one. They still have a couple guys. Have they announced the matches for SmackDown? What the qualifier? I don't think they have, right? So,
well, Big E beat Apollo, and then
there's two more. There's two more slots. So I don't think they've
more. Last man standing, if between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn this week is the other one. The other two matches, I have not heard what direction they're going with those, but I don't know if that would be a bad thing to go and give him a shot right off the top, have him go to SmackDown and be in the Money in the Bank.
Yeah, I agree, and it'd be the best place for him to go to start for sure.
So we had Roderick Strong, the new group debuted this week. I thought that was done well. I'm interested in seeing where they go, especially with like a Bronson Reed and possibly Karrion Kross leaving. Who gets moved up the pecking order? But Jay, next Tuesday, still back in my mind, I think the show's on Wednesdays. Next Tuesday, we've got the Great American Bash. You had the final push for Cole versus O'Reilly. I personally felt that the build kind of reached its peak last week. I thought this week's segment was fine. I didn't think it was anything great one way or another, but what's your thoughts going into this match next week? Do you think that this match could be anywhere as good as, basically the no holds barred match they had a couple of months back? I mean, what's your thoughts going into this, now?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't totally excited about that no holds barred match. So I think this has an opportunity to be better. The one thing that I noticed they kept saying is that this is the second match. So that leads me to believe there could be a third match. Kind of a inner circle pinnacle, drag this shit out as far as we can. So I could definitely see them doing something like that on a takeover. Who won the first one? O'Reilly, right? So
O'Reilly, yes.
I could see Cole winning this one, and then them saying, okay, now we've got to settle it, So yeah, I definitely see that taking place. But yeah, it was it's been the build's been fine. But it's hard to top the build that they had for the first one. I mean, it's hard to keep that momentum continuing to go. But yeah, we'll see how they continue. I think Cole probably is the favorite to win, and then they have a third match at a takeover.
Yeah, there's a takeover SummerSlam weekend, so that would make sense. Your other matches on the show that we know, it's a 4-match show. MSK versus Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa. I thought the sit down this week between the two teams, I thought was fine. I mean, I don't know if MSK is the greatest on the mic yet, but I thought they were okay. I personally think they're going to keep the titles. But what's your enthusiasm for this? Because I mean, and I'll tell you why I think they're going to keep the titles. Because with Swerve Scott winning, I think that there's a chance that they actually try to make Hit Row a major focus of the show, and I can see Hit Row beating MSK for the titles, and you actually have this stable with majority of the gold, and it makes them even look bigger.
I don't see.
And I don't think Ciampa and
I,
Gargano, Ciampa and Thatcher really can lose every match. I don't think they won't be over.
I don't see that happening.
Really?
I don't see Hit Row winning the tag titles for a while. They've wrestled like 3 matches. It could happen, but I feel like they'd really be. I mean, Swerve Scott's this has been coming for a long time for him, right? It wouldn't make sense for them to just give him the titles. They're still his henchmen. I mean, Top Dollar just signed with NXT. I actually looked them up. He just signed with NXT in January of 2020. So, and the other guy's been there for a long time. So, I guess anything could happen, but I don't see it. I think Thatcher and Ciampa are going to win the tag titles.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Ciampa hasn't really had a prominent role in a while. And, I think it'd be a good thing to have him have the titles and people chase him.
Like I said, I'm going to go with MSK, but I would not be disappointed either way. NXT Women's Tag Team Title match, the way Candice and Indy versus Io and Zoe Starks. Io and Zoe Starks won the 3-way. I thought the match was fine. I'm really interested to see what they do now, because it feels like Johnny Gargano is kind of, at least for right now, feels like the de facto babyface in the Karrion Kross storyline.
Yeah.
But you still have Indy and Candice kind of playing heels, and I wonder how some of that dynamic will work, in the future. So I wonder if they're going to keep the titles, or do you put the titles on this makeshift team of Io and Zoe Starks?
Yeah, I mean, the Johnny Gargano cross thing is weird because it's like a tweener versus a tweener. I think the way keeps the tag titles. But at the same time, right, it's kind of like the Io thing with Tommaso Ciampa. You have a main event level wrestler wrestling for the tag titles. I think, and that's where, to me, one of them wins and one of them doesn't win. And I'm going to say it's Ciampa that wins and Io Shirai doesn't win. And maybe there's some miscommunication with her and Zoe Stark, and then maybe Zoe Stark and her have a feud, which I think could make for, interesting way to develop Zoe Stark and continue, obviously, to push Io. So I could see something like that happening, but I think the way do keep the tag titles.
Interesting. All right. I mean, like I said, that's one of those matches that I'm really not sure, because once again, I'm not really sure where the way is going. Like a lot of for months, the way was in skits together, and over the last couple of weeks, they basically kind of separate them, where like you had Johnny, basically leave the arena without them, and they still had stuff, and then they're doing they almost don't even really talk about each other.
And that's why you talking about them losing the titles, because of Gargano doesn't make sense, right? If they are already two different entities, then they're gonna win or lose based off of them, not based off of Gargano. So you've kind of made the point for me and why the way are probably gonna keep the tag titles.
Last match that we know about, $1 million title match, LA Knight, still one of the worst names in wrestling, versus Cameron Grimes. If he loses, he has to be the butler. I don't think Knight's kept the title long enough for that to be a thing for him to lose it yet. And I think that Cameron Grimes he's a great wrestler, but the thing he does best is comedy, and him being a butler, I think is what they mostly will do for a little while. At the end of the day, I think he wins the title, but I think it's way too soon to have Cameron Grimes get his main goal.
I agree 100%. And there's so much TV they're going to be able to get from this, and funny skits they're going to be able to do. I mean, I hope LA Knight wins, because I want to see the skits and I want to see kind of what they do. There's a lot of television that they can get out of this. So I think LA Knight's probably the heaviest favorite of any of the matches that we've called. I feel like LA Knight is a strong prohibitive favorite.
And the only other thing that we kind of know is that this battery charger was at 81%. It's gone up basically 20% per week. So I would guess that whoever this is will be returning next week on the show. I honestly don't have any great idea who it's going to be.
No idea.
I think that the Dakota Kai, had injured. Oh God, I forgot her.
Tegan Knox
a while back, so maybe she could be coming back. She's been out for a while. But besides that, I don't really can't think of anybody who, they would either want to do like a big return for who's been hurt, or could it be as simple as, Finn Balor took 4 weeks to recharge the battery. Now he's back to go and kick ass.
I think Balor's is a good guess. He's been gone for a little while. I think Balor's a pretty solid guess. Yeah. He was in a 5-way? He wasn't a 5-way, right?
I don't think he wasn't. It was Cole, Gargano, Pete Dunne, and
Kyle O'Reilly.
So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe I think maybe it'd be Balor. I think that's a good one. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
We'll see how that works out. But we spoke a lot of interesting things about NXT to start off the show. Jay, unless you have some other NXT related things, I think we can move on to a couple of other topics.
Sounds good.
All right. So AEW on Saturday held its last preemptive show. They'll be back tonight. Looks like it's another good show, but Jungle Boy versus Omega did good for a Saturday night with the ratings. We had the clean finish. Jungle Boy most likely at some point will win a title down the road. I thought the match was solid. I don't think it's the best match AEW's had all year. I mean, I've heard some people have said that. I think it's always whenever we see a really good match, it's recency biased. But what was your thoughts on Jungle Boy versus Kenny Omega?
Yeah, I thought it was a good match. I think Jungle Boy really has, as much as he has marbles in his mouth, he can't talk. He has really shown a lot of improvement in the ring just from seeing him. And I think he has a lot of untapped potential. So yeah, no, I think also congratulations for him with Anna Jay. That's a good move for him. So congratulations to him for that. So he did not win a title, but he won the girl. So good for him. No, I thought the match was good. I think it's just the start of things to come for Jungle Boy. Clearly, he's someone that, he's with Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt, but clearly he's the guy in that group who's going to be, kind of the single star, and they're going to be like his buddies basically with him. But yeah, so I thought it was a good match, and kind of we'll see where things are. I did not anticipate Jungle Boy winning. There's no way he's going until he gets better in the mic. He just can't be a champion unless he has a manager.
Well, I guess the only other thing on that would be, what did you think? That there was no quote unquote interference during the actual match, which is one of the things that people like about AEW. You always have 99 out of 100 times you have a finish. But what was your thoughts on the post match with all the convoluted stuff with the Bucks coming in, the Hardy?
I hate it. It's too much stuff. It's too. So you gotta let some stuff just naturally, organically happen. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like Attitude Era, like we gotta just have all this shit happen. Why is Matt Hardy involved? Why is he there? So I know he's there because of Christian, and I'm sure that's gonna be one of these matches coming up. But it's like, come on. So I didn't love it. It wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but again, it's one of the things I think that takes away from making certain things feel
special,
important. Yeah.
And then this week, tonight on AEW, got a couple of matches that are announced. The two big matches that have been announced are Eddie Kingston and Pentagon versus the Young Bucks in an eliminator match, which they've done quite a few of these. The Bucks have always won the eliminator match. So I do wonder, because you have these 4 big shows coming up, when they start their road, they're back on the road starting next week. Do you give Kingston and Penta any chance of being the first team to actually win an eliminator match? Or do you think the Bucks continue to beat people, and then at just some point as we get closer to All Out, someone actually either wins an eliminator or a feud happens to set up the All Out match?
Yeah. So, right. I think that I think Kingston and Penta are definitely underdogs. I don't think they're gigantic underdogs though. And so I think it might be a way to kind of spice things up and, keep things going. So yeah, I think that they absolutely have a chance to win. Penta and Eddie, I wouldn't expect it. They've talked about their makeshift tag team, blah, blah, blah. Clearly Eddie Kingston's a guy that AEW really likes. And so I could see them giving him a push, but it's like, okay, Eddie Kingston gets another shot at the tag titles. He's a singles wrestler. He was with Moxley. So, in that way, it's like, okay, we're going to give this guy another shot. So I get where it could kind of go either way, but I expect the Bucks to win, but would not be surprised if Eddie and Penta win.
I have the same general thought as you. I mean, I kind of like the idea. I mean, I know that some people don't love the Bucks as heels. They think they're too goofy, but I like the idea that they're
so goofy. They're so goofy. They're just over the top, and they're just not good heels. I think Matt Jackson's a good heel. I think Nick Jackson is just trying way too hard. He just should not talk.
And I do appreciate the fact that they make their champions strong. Young Bucks basically never lose, and those titles mean something.
Absolutely, I agree.
I agree
with that 100%.
I'm not going to run down other companies, but you know what? One of the things you can say about AEW is their champions feel like they're booked as champions.
Absolutely.
Not 50-50 booking. Your other two big matches that we know of is Miro versus Brian Pillman Jr. There's no chance that Brian Pillman Jr. wins the match, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how much Pillman has progressed and how much offense he gets in from Miro. Because I think Miro has this character now that he's really good at. And I would like to see Miro kill him. I mean, I know that you want to see Pillman get.
And you got to have the guy come in there and he's got to come in there and have a couple of moves, have a surprise. Like, you're in the business of putting people over, not burying people. He's going to win the match. He's going to, Corey, if he beats him in 2 minutes, it's like, okay, they gave him a shot against, he had a shot against, they had a shot against the Bucks. They lost that match, and that was a competitive match. You don't have to squash someone to be put over. If Miro beats him in a competitive match, he's still going to look good. We've established who Miro is. He came out defending Penelope Ford's honor and destroyed a bunch of people, right? Like, we don't need to have him squash. He's not a character we're looking to establish. He is established. We need to establish Brian Pillman Jr. because I think that's a guy that they have some faith in. I think that's a guy that they like, and I think he's a natural babyface. They got a lot of cheers when they came out on Dark. I think it was Elevation on Monday. So I think there's those. He's got a great story. Obviously, the dark side of the ring.
Yeah.
But even when he was in MLW, he showed a lot of personality. Like, he was really funny in some of those promos and backstage stuff. So, oh, by the way, speaking of, I was just thinking about this because MLW had the Hart Foundation, and it looks like neither one of those guys are there. You know who that could be? The whole battery thing could be Davey Boy Smith Jr. So just throwing that out there as a guy for NXT. Possibly.
That'd be a cool surprise.
Yeah, would be. But anyway, I think Pillman Jr. They have to make him competitive. They can't bury the guy because I think they like him and they look at him as a possible future guy in the company. And so do I. I think he's really, really good. And I think the one improvement he has made is on the mic. I think he's really improved on the mic, and I'm gonna give MLW a lot of credit for that because they really let him go. They really gave him a chance, and I think they helped him develop his mic skills. So I think that's competitive. But I mean, and I know you're gonna talk about the biggest match. I think this MJF Sammy Guevara match is one of the biggest matches they've had on Dynamite in a really long time.
Agreed. Hey, thank you. We'll go right there. This is one of those matches where you almost wish that nobody could lose, but because the way that they book, there are winners and losers. So, I mean, I would expect MJF because, he's basically never lost a singles match except against Moxley. I think, he hasn't lost except in tags, except the Moxley title match. He hasn't lost. And I still think that the general idea is the one-on-one match between MJF and Jericho at, maybe at All Out or one of these, specialty shows.
Yeah.
And especially, due to the fact that Jericho's on commentary tonight, I could see, maybe something happening, maybe some sort of confrontation there. But I do agree with you. This is a really big test for two of your young guys. Like, a lot of people say, the three guys that they're going to build this brand when all of your former WWE guys, either go into the sunset or aren't big anymore are Sammy, MJF, and Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy had his time to shine last week. and now it's time for Sammy and MJF to shine. And I think that is going to be a really good test for them.
Yeah, I mean, the match is going to be good. I have no doubt about that. But I think what they do with the person who loses the match going forward is interesting. You know, they've made a concerted effort to put Sammy over. He won the match. He won the Stadium Stampede. He's been the one coming out saving the Inner Circle multiple times, coming out saving the Inner Circle. In their Blood and Guts match, he was the star of that match. So they've done a lot of things to make him stand out. So maybe if they have him lose here, you could say, hey, they've made him stand out, but he lost the match, but they've still made him stand out to the point where a loss is not going to kill him. Then there's the idea like MJF has beaten Jericho already.
Right.
And so like, does he need to win this match to put himself over against Jericho? I don't know. Personally, I don't have a lot of interest in seeing that MJF versus Jericho match, but that's for other people. But so it really could go either way. I think you're right. I think MJF wins, but it's a really big match. I think it's one of the biggest matches they've had on Dynamite that they've ever had in the company's history on Dynamite. That's not for a title, because whoever loses this match really could skyrocket, and whoever loses this match are gonna have to figure out kind of what the next steps are. So
right. I mean, like I said, I could see Sammy having the match won, and then the Pinnacle come down and they do something to affect, setting up the match some point in the next couple of weeks with Sean Spears, and I could see that type of stuff happening. But Jay, one of the things we didn't talk about from last week's show before we move on from AEW and get to a couple of things is one of the better talking segments they've had in the pandemic era, or just in general. You had Conan coming, his first actual appearance. I mean, he's done some backstage stuff, but Conan and Tully Blanchard. I thought that Conan was in rare form. I think when Conan is on, he's one of the best promos in the industry.
I didn't say when he's on. What does that mean when he's on? Is he off? I've watched Conan promos forever. He's always on. I mean, so he's always great. Like he's with MLW, he's great. He's always great. So it's not when he's on, he's always on.
You're right. I guess that was the wrong way of saying that, but I thought he was great. I mean, I think Tully was fine, but it was almost like Tully didn't realize what he was going up against a little bit. And some of the lines that Conan said, and we'll get into momentarily here, were just so sharp and made you think, and they were relevant to the times that we're in. It was just like Tony Khan said, here's the mic, get over the fact that we have this match coming up, but I trust you enough to go and say what you need. And, you got 6 minutes, whatever the hell long the segment was, just roll.
I mean, giving Conan a live mic is a little dangerous.
A little dangerous.
I mean, MLW, like he's just off his fucking rocker in MLW. Sometimes he says some wild shit. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I think, Proud and Powerful. I think Santana's really developed on a mic. I think Ortiz kind of is what he is. And that's the example for the Bucks is Ortiz says very little and Santana does more of the talking. And I think that's what they should do with the Bucks. I think Matt Jackson should do all the talking and Nick Jackson should stand in the background. And that should be their roles. I think that would help put them over a little better. As far as Proud and Powerful goes, if they weren't in the Inner Circle and, all that jazz, I would say kind of reforming LAX with Conan as their manager, I think would be fantastic. And so I hope that Conan is involved more moving forward. And I think based off he got killed basically. So I don't know. I don't know where he's going to be, but I'd love to see him and be more involved in the show moving forward and helping LAX out, helping Proud and Powerful out specifically. So we'll see. But yeah, the segment was great. It was very entertaining. And, not to compare this to WWE, and we try not to do that too much, but they're not going to do a segment like that in the WWE. They're just never going to have a segment like that in the WWE. It's very ECW-esque. And yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that Conan went and made me care about this match than anything that they've done before with, the attacks and the different stuff. It felt like a real feud all of a sudden. I mean, you have two of the best tag teams in wrestling, absolutely.
Oh, I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I think they've done a really good job with like their vignettes and stuff like
I the
that.
promo package.
I don't agree. Oh, Conan made me want to watch the match now. I don't agree with that at all. I think it was a great segment, and I think it's okay. It's saying it was a great segment, but they've also done because I think by saying you say you say that sometimes like, oh, that made me want to see it, but to me, then you're to me, in my opinion, you're negating the other stuff they've done. This isn't one of these feuds where they haven't done anything. They've absolutely built this up over, I think, a long span of time. Now you could say Conan put it over the top.
That's more of what
but in my opinion, like I think they've done a lot. And I rip AEW for sometimes, whatever, but they've really done a very, very good job on their TV, not just BTE or Road 2 series, on their TV, of establishing why these guys don't like each other, and things like that. The one line that was funny with Conan is when he talked about like the incarceration rate for Black and brown people, and the audience was like, we don't know what to say. So they didn't really react to that, which I mean makes sense. But yeah, no, I thought all his lines were great. The line at the end about Tessa Blanchard being married to Daga, you better learn Spanish. The whole thing was just was really, really great and really fun. And it was fun. It was funny, but it was also like fun. Like this is what wrestling can be oftentimes, but isn't all the time.
Agreed. And like I said, I'll just finish it on this, was the idea that I guess what I was trying to say at the end of it was the fact that they brought the idea that Conan's like a father figure to them, and then you had the attack at the end, which of course everyone knew that's where it was going to go. But you had the attack on Conan, and if you know anything about Conan, he hasn't been in the greatest of health over the last couple of years, and that that just led that one more piece where we might have had disagreements, but you took out our father figure. Now this match is going to happen, and I just felt that was like an exciting thing that made me go, all right, I'm ready to see this match. Everything leading up to it was really good, but now I need to see this match sooner than later.
Yeah, and it definitely establishes FTR as like these complete assholes, So yeah, no, it was a great segment.
Yeah. So Jay, I think that unless you have anything else AEW related that you want to speak on before we talk about the big one at the end, unless you.
No, we can wait for that. We can wait for that at the end.
All right. WWE second week in a row for Raw was, I guess the best way you could put it, was watchable. It feels like as crowds are coming back, they're starting to get their act together, in a semi sort of way.
Are they?
I thought Raw was we got
a superhero, we got a demonic person, we have a white guy using a strap.
Yeah, that was that's quite old weird.
They have, he's a baby face apparently. We have a bunch of segments that are silly. Is it better? Like I don't know that it's better. I don't think the shows are. I don't think it was a good show at all. I mean, there were good parts to it, I should say. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's like, maybe the crowd won't shit on much of the things that happen. You know what I mean? Maybe they'll just be like, oh, all right. But I don't. I guess the idea that they're getting their act together, I'm not sure if I'm there with you on that.
Well, particularly for Raw. Well, my favorite segment of the night, and it's amazing. Pretty much everything we're talking about this week are really good promos. But I thought the segment between and it's been building over the last couple of weeks, so this doesn't come out of nowhere. But I thought the MVP Kofi Kingston segment, I thought was really strong. And I think that you continue to see, I don't think he's winning the match of Money in the Bank by any stretch, because I think Lashley's time isn't over yet. But Kofi, if given the chance, can be such an inspirational, quality babyface champion or contender. And that's sometimes just what you're looking for, is good things that make you say, all right, I can see where they can go in the future. And that segment really worked to me. And maybe and I thought the main event, going like 30 minutes, I thought was a quality main event. So, there were points when I left that show, I remembered, like I said, the confrontation, and I remembered the main event.
Yeah. And, as Jason Powell said, they need to establish some male baby faces on the brand, and so maybe Kofi's that person, and we talked about this at the time, right? Like when he lost to Brock, they did such a bad job of trying to reestablish him after losing in 8 seconds. Like it's like he didn't give a shit about losing. I feel like that's a stain that has stuck with him, quite frankly. You can win as many titles, tag titles as you want, but you were the WWE champion. You lost in 8 seconds, and it didn't seem like you gave a shit. And that's something that's always going to hang over his head as possibly being a main event level guy, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Because if he would have just wrestled him again and had a good match, then it would have been like, all right, well, that first one was a fluke, but you still lost, but you're still a guy potentially. Now I feel like they're just shoehorning him in because like we don't got anybody else, we can't make it Ricochet. So here you go. And so I although I enjoyed the MVP segment with Kofi, I still think there's something really missing with the feud. And I think part of that is the believability. And even if Kofi beat Brock or didn't lose to Brock in 8 seconds, that probably would be the case. But I think that it makes me less. It makes me feel like he is just a guy. Not that he's a main event guy who got put in a spot because they don't have another guy. He's not really a main event guy, but he's a guy they just need to put in there. If that makes sense.
No, I can see that. Oh, and so let's, some of the people in the Wrestling Life Facebook group gave a couple of comments today. Felipe Lucio, who is one half of the Total Basis podcast, which you can catch on Sundays, wrote, "I'm a huge fan of Conan, so I'll go wherever he tells me to go." So, I mean, there are certain guys out there that when they speak, they make an impact. And I think that's
Absolutely.
what we see. And, we see similar thing with MVP, Conan. We've got these guys who maybe can't go in the ring anymore, but they can do something else in the industry that really helps push other guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, also Brian Drake from the
There he is. The
the football
fantasy football hustle. Yep.
Hustle, who did what we told, I think this week they did 101, but they celebrated their 100th episode. Gave us a little bit of love early in the episode. And our social media guru, Jackie Endy from the You Don't Know Jackie podcast, gave us a little waving emoji, saying that she's joined us. And I'm sure she'll say something really positive about Jason momentarily and something snide about me. So we'll wait for that comment. But Jay, yeah. So like I said, Raw was better, at least in my opinion. SmackDown this past week with the return of Edge, I liked it. I don't know if I needed this to turn out to be a three-way for the title. Going at Money in the Bank. What was your thoughts on
A three-way?
Yeah, it's going to be Edge versus Rollins versus Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank.
Rollins isn't in it.
Yeah, he is.
Did they just put him in it?
They announced it like the following day.
Huh. Because on Talking Smack, he wasn't. I don't know if you saw it Talking Smack, but he was like, they were saying, it's Edge, and they announced it as so they just shoehorned him in. That's interesting. I did not know they announced that. Okay, all right, that's.
Oh, and congratulations to him and Becky Lynch, who just got married yesterday. But
yeah, I didn't. Oh, that's interesting. I agree with you. He does not need to be. He does not need to be in the. He does not need to be in the match. But I guess it's a way to put him in, where he's not going to be in the Money in the Bank, but it's a way to have him have some type of impact on the show without being. Yeah, I don't. But I don't like that. See, I'm looking on CBS. They're saying it's still just the two of them, Reigns against Edge.
Well, thank you for supporting my other job. Well, and
I mean that's as of a couple of days ago. So I'll keep looking, but they didn't. I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, and just two more comments, because we're talking here. Jackie Endy didn't take long to respond. We'll follow Jason to any podcast he does. Can't say that much for Corey.
Let's go.
I love everyone in the You Don't Know Jackie podcast, some more than others apparently right now. Yeah, and Felipe with another comment. Since coming back to wrestling in 2016, I've watched Conan on Lucha Underground, AEW, and Impact. And pretty much enjoyed his work in every promotion he's been in.
So Corey, I'm on WWE's website and they have it Reigns against Edge.
Really? I swore I saw somewhere.
So yeah, so that's because they made a big deal on Talking Smack about Rollins not being in there. So
all right, maybe I'm wrong. I could have swore I saw a graphic.
I mean, maybe he'll be added, and maybe that's the plan, that he'll be added on Friday. You know, there's also, I don't know if when does WWE go back on the road? Is it July 16th?
I believe so. Yeah, that's SmackDown. Yeah.
So this one's going to be July 2nd. They may have taped the last couple of Smack. They're supposed to be taping these last shows from the Thunderdome.
Yeah, I think it's next week they're going to tape them. Yeah.
So they didn't tape them yet. So I don't know. Maybe that's going to happen. But right now on the website, it's just Reigns against Edge.
All right, maybe I was wrong. I could have swore I read that. But
yeah. Also, it wouldn't make any sense for them to just say, "Oh, we're just going to tell you now that it's a triple threat." Like you would think they would do some a segment on SmackDown or whatever. So again, right now, Reigns against Edge. I think it'll be a good match. And I mean, I would say Edge has no chance of winning because Reigns is beating everybody. But I guess it is possible. I don't see it. But with Reigns not being, or with Rollins not being in the match, but saying he's ready to be in there and stuff like that, but he's a heel. Where does he land with all this? I think that part, and that's what I'm saying. The storylines for SmackDown are just so much more compelling. And there's a lot of meat on that bone, a lot of ways they can go with how they decide to do the main event for Money in the Bank. And I think Reigns Edge will definitely be the main event.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being the main event. Jay, unless there's other stuff WWE related you want to talk about, I think it's a good time to do some plugs.
Yep. So we're part of the great Life Group podcasts. Monday, we've got Dong City with Henry and Vince. Tuesday, we've got The Audible with Matt and Randy. Football. Right now, things are slowing down. Corey was a guest host on there. That's how you know things were slowing down. Wow. Thursday, you've got us, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Friday, we've got The Step Back with Jacob and Leon. And then Sunday, more of a fantasy baseball podcast. You've got Total Bases. So check all those podcasts out. The guys are all great guys and fun to listen to. So check them out. We are Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, Jackie. At Work Shoot Pod. So check us out at Work Shoot Pod. I did tweet out something that we're going to actually talk about right now. So trying to get more active on there, and I might live tweet the show tonight now that it's on Wednesdays and I'm going to be home. My wife's away right now. So I may live tweet the show. So yeah. So stay tuned for that.
And as always, she gets her multiple mentions on the show. There's another show that I'm part of, and you will hopefully be on again real soon. We're coming to our 100th episode as well. Do you remember the name of that podcast by chance?
You don't know Jackie. You don't know Jackie. Jackie Andy, Jackie Rachel, Jackie Corey, the comedy podcast for the ages.
Very cool. We will have the second half of the overrated show known as Friends this week. And then we'll start getting closer, like I said, to episode 100. Having hopefully Jason will be available to come on that show, and some other people from the past. Before we start, newer and more interesting things, as we'll talk about in the weeks to come. But Jay, we usually, have a little fun on this show, but every once in a while, something will come up that, will spark an interest. And Jay, I'm going to let you take the floor on our final subject today, because it's something that I think was near and dear to your heart. And, we don't need to go that crazy, but I was watching AEW Dark or Elevation, the one on Monday. I forget the name. Okay. The names escape me, and because you told me about Will Utah, and that's my dude, and so I was like, let me watch, check it out or whatever, and of course he got squashed. But Private Party came out. I'm like,
man, I haven't seen these dudes in forever. And then I'm like, wait a minute, they're heels and they're black. The Acclaimed right now, I think they're going to be baby faces eventually, but they're heels. Scorpio Sky, it kind of goes on and on. But, Jade, all these African
Will
American
Hobbs,
wrestlers.
yeah.
Well, Hobbs, like all their black prominent wrestlers are heels. And you look at some of the other companies, you look at MLW with Myron Reed, you look at WWE with the New Day, with Bianca Belair, you look at Impact with Rich Swann, who used to be their champion. You look at Ring of Honor with the Foundation with Jonathan Gresham and Jay Lethal. And, I said last week that I thought one reason why Jungle Boy had an opportunity to stand out was because he was a good-looking young white guy, and I think AEW likes those guys. And I want to make this clear, because people say, "Oh, you're saying everything's about race and blah 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 blah." I'm just pointing out that I think it's interesting that none of their prominent wrestlers who are black are baby faces, and that might change. But like, why is Scorpio Sky a heel? You know what I mean? Like, why? Will Hobbs is different. I think eventually they'll turn him. But I think it's interesting. And I don't have like a take like, oh, Tony Khan's a racist. Like, that's not what this is. That's not what this is about. I just think it's an interesting thing to note. And I hope that changes. I know that they're trying to do stuff. You got Lee Johnson, and I know they're trying to put over some of the younger guys, black wrestlers, and Top Flight kind of got hurt by the one guy getting hurt. But I don't know. I find it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always interesting with the white guy on the podcast giving his take, obviously, because he doesn't live the experiences, and sometimes you don't notice things as simply because, like I said,
I didn't notice it until Private Party because they were big baby faces,
right.
And now they're part of this goofy stable, and they're barely on the show except for like when they come out and they attack somebody.
Right. So I'm going to take this from two facts. I totally agree with Jason on the idea that there's a under amount of African American or black wrestlers in AEW, and you could say in a lot of other companies as well. You have some, but a lot more black characters are usually come across as heels, or the not straight up baby faces. I mean, you have the New Day, and now like in MLW, you said you have Myron Reed, who was a heel for quite a while. Now he's a baby face. But there's two things I want to say here. One, like I said, I agree with you that this is something that's got to be adjusted. And then two, I think that a lot of times, and you can tell me this is an excuse, but I think it's a lot of times, and this is black, white, or anything else, especially when a person isn't TV ready or hasn't been. Scorpio Sky is a different aspect. I think the storyline was he got hurt, he got frustrated on the lack of a push, and he came back with a more aggressive style, and him and Ethan Page had a chemistry, and now they're heels. And I think in the long term, I think Scorpio Sky is going to be one of the bigger baby faces down the line, because he was one, and I think he worked pretty well as a baby face. I don't know if he ever really stood out besides his very first time on the program, where he wrestled basically with no shoes on, and they wound up winning the other tag team titles that first tournament. But I do think that it's easier to be a heel, especially in the beginning. And I could see like a Will Hobbs or the Acclaim being baby faces in the long run, because like I said, you've had other people like the New Day characters start off as heels. Bobby Lashley, who's one of the top 4 or 5 guys in WWE right now, is a heel. So, I mean, yes, you do have the Bianca Belairs who are doing really well as a babyface, but I do think it takes time. And also where if you want to bring a lot of these younger guys up, you stick them with a manager or a mouthpiece or something. And the majority of the mouthpieces or the managers in this company are all heels. So, like a Hobbs is got to be like Jay Cargill. I don't know if Jay Cargill works as the arrogant babyface. I think she would just come off as a bitch. I mean, I understand it's her characters. I'm that bitch. But I think that as a heel, it allows her to go and create a character and be more like not black, but Samoan. Roman Reigns didn't work as a babyface. He's a heel now, and at some point he's going to be babyface again. And I think he'll be more over because he had the experience of the freedom of being a character. Does it make up for the fact that you have no? And I know it's a very big thing. in every minority community, you want to have people that you can look up and see yourself.
Absolutely.
And I see that's kind of, I think, part of the reason why this hits you more with a lot of things that go in our society and everything else, on the idea of, even with, maybe you didn't think about this, we spoke about earlier with the Conan promo, you have the, 4-1 or 5 to whatever it was, of minorities in jail.
No, I mentioned it. I mean, I think that's all a part of it, right? But then I think it's just, black guys can't be baby faces. I think some of it comes down to like really deeper societal issues and systemic issues that we have in our country too. But some of it's just like, man, we can't get the junkyard dog. Like we can't get one baby face. Like, and so, and I know that they don't have a ton of black wrestlers who are veterans. Let's say.
And look at, hey, and the Rock
I think they have.
The heel. I mean, a lot of African American.
Yeah, Corey. I know you're gonna get. What I'm saying is though, you can give me all these historical examples, and I understand that, but we could do that until the cows come home. They still don't have any prominent African American wrestlers who are baby faces. To me, that's a problem.
I agree.
And hopefully that'll be situated and figured out at some point. It's just interesting to me. And also like how, you have a booking staff, and I'm glad like Mark Henry's there, but you have a booking staff with Tony Khan and the EVPs, and, they're all white, right? And, even down to the women, like I don't know who there's no woman who's booking stuff. It's, I think Omega and.
I mean, there was rumors that Brandy Rhodes.
Come on. She can't wrestle with a paper bag, right? So
no, she's
there to be a face. She's not, has no influence. So, I mean, it's a beautiful face, it is, and congratulations to her and Cody. But right, she's not there to have any impact, So yeah, I think you have, and the same thing we talked about with the women's division, how until recently, like it was kind of the redheaded stepchild, because again, you got a bunch of white guys booking for a bunch of women. So I think they need to figure that part out. Maybe that's the bigger issue. And maybe Mark Henry being there will really, really help them. Having a prominent, African-American veteran who's been through it all will kind of help them in terms of booking, some of their African-American characters, and we'll see what they do in terms of having a strong female veteran who may be retired. Like a Molly Holly would be unbelievable there, so maybe that's where they look to down the road. But I think if they want to be this like inclusive company that they kind of, want to seem to be with the Pride stuff, which is great. Happy Pride Month. It's almost over. But like, you can say all the stuff, but the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is in the pudding. So we'll see where they go and where they are with inclusion here, as we continue to march forward. That being said, they are still a young company, and a lot of their black wrestlers are young in experience. And to your point, it does take some time to figure that out. But like Private Party, what are you doing with them? They were baby faces that everybody loved. Like, and Scorpios. So some of the stuff is like silly in my opinion. But I guess we'll see where they go with that.
Just a couple of quick comments here. Jackie Endy, that's the problem. Why would she has to come off that way? Anything to do with implicit bias? I think that was in regards to Jake Cargill.
Absolutely.
Felipe from our Total Basis podcast. I guess personality. If I'm sorry, that's a different one. But basically, it was saying is it better for some of people of color to be heels or have like goofy baby face, characters? Because that's usually a lot of the baby faces in most of these companies are, just basically goofballs. And that's an interesting point. And he also wrote, I guess personally, if Pentagon Dark turned into a baby face, I would be pissed off. Maybe it's more complicated than initially thought. So I mean, and one of the things they are doing well, and I know this is kind of a different subject, is as hard of a time as they have with the representation for African American black characters, they're doing a very good job on the babyface side with your Latin X characters, and to a much lesser degree with your Asian characters. I mean, you have Proud and Powerful. You got Sammy Guevara, who we've spoken about. You know, so those are big time babyface characters. So they're doing a good job. And then, you know, with Shida and to a much lesser extent Rio. You know, so I mean, it is a very wonder how things will work in the long run. But I think that like your type of tweet, and if other people speak about this, maybe we can get a change. But Jay, any last thoughts on this before?
No, I think that's an interesting point by Felipe. Like, right, like, is it better to have a goofy babyface character that no one's going to respect, or have them be a heel? I guess my thing is, when Scorpio Sky was a babyface, like, he wasn't a goofball. You know, he was like this good-looking dude who wore Jordans, who had some swag, who was a really good wrestler. Like, you know, like, and Private Party were these guys who like to go to the club. Like, they were both fun characters that, you know, they didn't need to break up and make heels as quickly. You know, so I would much rather them stay heels for their own, you know, for their longevity's sake, rather than be goofy baby faces. But, you know, what we think is goofy, like the New Day, other people really, really enjoy. And those guys have all turned out to be stars as a result. So, you know, it kind of depends. But hopefully, you know, they'll kind of change some things moving forward. And I do think beyond what we see from, you know, some of their, you know, their wrestlers being pushed, I think their and their office, they need to have more black and brown and female voices. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
So Jay, like I said, we covered some fun stuff. We covered some serious stuff. This is what you can get every week on the Work Shoot Wrestling podcast, talking about, you know, the serious and the silly, because, you know, as you always see, Jay, you know, it's wrestling. What are we talking about here? I think it was a great episode. I hope you enjoy your 4th of July weekend. You know, take a little bit of vacation time in Rochester, catch up with some old friends, and maybe, you know, tell Rocco to we said hello as he continues to strive in ROH. And of course, I said before, you can check out that interview wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, check us out on Twitter and Instagram at WorkShootPod. Jason, as always, the final word is yours as we get ready to celebrate, you know, Independence Day.
I think we're done here. See ya.